Do you work with clients that constantly contact you after hours and expect you to complete things that are totally out of the scope? You might feel that they're not respecting your boundaries. So let's talk about how to solve that problem. Hello and welcome back. My name is Cecilia Peralta. I am a virtual assistant, and in this channel I share tips, tutorials, and industry insights to help virtual assistants become successful business owners. It is a very common complaint among real estate transaction coordinators that realtors actually calling them, texting them, and emailing them, asking for answers, for information outside of business hours and during weekends. And we're going to discuss the different actions you can take in order to put an end to that, because the transaction coordinators are actually feeling like nobody respects their boundaries. Okay, so let me tell you that I totally understand where you're coming from and what you're experiencing, because it happened the same to me. I remember when I was actively doing sales as a realtor that one of my buyers used to text me at 1 a.m. in the morning asking me questions about houses. So obviously, before I make the decision to have a conversation and correct that behavior, I wanted to, think about the things that I was doing. And then I realized a couple of things. The client wasn't the only one texting that late. It was normal to receive texts from another real estate agent at 11 p.m. or later sometimes. So a couple of things happened here. First of all, that buyer actually worked overnight. So for him, actually, it was business hours, as ridiculous as it sounds, right? So I start seeing a pattern in here. The buyer was texting me super late because he was in front of the computer and probably had the time to actually send me those questions or send me those houses that he wanted to see the next day. And also, real estate agents actually are very active after hours. Reason being is because they have to show houses, right, after the buyers are available, which is normally after they leave work, after 5 p.m., 6 p.m., and during weekends. Now, I am not saying that justifies the 1 a.m. text or the 11:30 p.m. phone call from a realtor. Absolutely not. But I think that it helps when it comes to understanding why they behave that way. For them, it's the busiest time, after hours and during weekends. And for us, it's the time that we dedicate to our families and we rest. So what I'm trying to say here is, first of all, we need to understand that we work with clients that actually have schedules that are like totally opposite to our own schedules. We are serving them, however, we don't work at the same time. And that's okay. It doesn't mean that we have to start working nights or weekends. But I believe that it's going to help out if we put ourselves in their shoes. For example, if a real estate agent is working with a client and thinking about something that he wants you to do tomorrow, he has two options. Either he texts you, email you, call you to leave a voice message at 8:30 p.m. or he find a way to remember to call you tomorrow first time in the morning when he is lead generating, when he is also busy. So honestly, I totally understand that. They just need to take that information that they need to give you out of their mind and put it somewhere else so they can move on to the next task that they have to complete without having to remember to contact you tomorrow. In this case, I don't see what's the problem that they call you or text you or email you. Now, let's clarify a couple of things. First of all, remember when I was telling you that this client was texting me at 1 a.m.? Well, he was texting my phone because I was using my cell phone for business. My first recommendation is that you get a separate number for your business. Get a Google Voice. Leave it in your computer. Disable the notifications in your phone after 5 p.m. If you have a separate number, you don't have to even see that they are calling, texting you, or email you. So if that is the issue, that is the solution that I recommend. Now, I also know that in some cases, they are expecting you to reply. They're expecting you to answer that phone call at whatever hours. That is totally different. Now, if that is the case, I'm going to challenge you. And I'm going to ask you, did you clearly communicate your hours of operations on your onboarding call? Let's go even deeper. Do you have in place an onboarding call? An onboarding process? Maybe it's not a call, maybe it's an email, whatever you use in order to communicate. What are the rules for your business? What are your boundaries? Did you clearly communicate that? Because if you did, then you don't have to worry. They might want you to answer at 3 a.m. in the morning. Oh, well, too bad. You don't operate at that time. Now, if they're having an attitude, if they're upset, what I will do is I will have a conversation with them, right? I will have that difficult conversation in a very respectful manner, because remember, we still need clients. We don't want to, end up the relationship with them. We try to save it, right? So we want to have a nice conversation about it, but you want to be very clear and let them know. And sometimes it takes time. I can totally assure you that it takes time. It takes repetition. But it is your job to remind them. Now, if you're telling me, listen, Cecilia, I did the onboarding process, I informed them about everything, I have conversations with them, and they still call me and get upset and blame me if I don't pick up the phone and I don't give them the information. Then I have to break the news for you. This is not a good client. And if that client is causing you a ton of grief, then you might decide that it's time to give an ultimatum. In a good way, right? I mean, not threatening, but giving them one last chance, have one last conversation, and if not, let them know that unfortunately you cannot accommodate their needs and that you have to part ways. Now, sometimes this also happens not just with realtors. You will have to do the same with your clients, which are either the sellers or the buyers, because sometimes they also do the same thing. They call you at whatever hour asking you for some type of information, and they are under the impression that you're not answering your phone. It takes too long for you to get back to them. Well, let's do the same type of exercise. First of all, let's try to understand where they're coming from. Because remember, they are working with your client, the realtor, who works after hours and weekends. So they probably don't know that the assistant in their minds, the transaction coordinator, actually work in a totally different schedule than their realtors. It's not obvious, if you ask me. So we have to be facilitators. And part of what we do is to facilitate that type of information for our clients' clients. And I believe that you can see where I'm going with that. First of all, you have to understand the situation. It's super easy to, get upset because someone is not doing what we are expecting them to do. But the next question is, are we telling people what is acceptable or not for us? So it actually is your job to protect your boundaries, right? And more than protect them, I like to say that it is your job to communicate your boundaries, because they might not even know what are your boundaries in the first place. People are so busy with their own boundaries, with their own things going on. So it's super important that when you start the interaction from the very beginning, you take the time to clearly communicate boundaries, which you can also name them as expectations, right? Because sometimes when we say boundaries, it's been used a lot and it cannot have, in some cases, like a very strong, sometimes negative connotation. And you can do it in a way that is actually showing the benefit for them. It's not about me. So when I do a courtesy call to the buyers or the sellers, I don't tell them, I'm not working weekends and nights, so don't even try. What I say is, hey, I know that this is probably a new process for you and you might have a lot of questions. I am here to help. Just wanted to make sure that you know that you can find me in the office Monday to Friday, 8:30 to 5:30. So it's a difference. Now it's about them. Now you're the good guy trying to, give them ways to communicate effectively with you. Aside from that, which is always the first step to clearly communicate that, then the next thing that unfortunately you will have to do all the time is to remind people. Why? They're busy. They cannot memorize and be thinking, what are the business hours for every single person or business they interact with in their life. So help them out, okay? Give them reminders. For example, as part of my signature, I include my hours of operations. When I leave the office, normally I do it on the weekends, but you can do it every night as well. Just set up the out of office, letting them know that you're closed for the day, but you will be, replying to anything, any type of communication the next business day. After all, you are a business owner, and as a business owner, you get to choose your services, your hours of operations, your prices. So exercise that right with responsibility. And make sure that you always have communication in mind. It's something that never stops. You always have to be communicating your value, communicating your services, communicating your new offers, communicating. That is what you do.